This video may contain imagery that would be disturbing to young or sensitive viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Top 5 Greatest Supernatural Monster Types. What is it that entrances us with tales of creatures beyond this existence? Why do we sit and listen, enraptured by stories of things not entirely of this world? What makes us wonder about these things as we listen to every story about them, even if they're not that good? This video is not about cryptids, which are creatures that have been seen and spotted but not verified by scientific discovery. In other words, such legends as Bigfoot and all his cousins, Nessie, aliens, and ghosts will not be on this list but may come up later. Instead, this video is about these things that are considered supernatural, things that would seem to come from nowhere. I'm not discussing specific supernatural monsters, but types, and these types tend to go in cycles, one type being preferred over the others. So with that, sit back, relax, and let's get started. Number 5. Zombies. There's a reason why, for a while now, these guys have been at the top of the cycle. The idea of walking corpses has been around for a while, but like the idea of death itself, it scares the hell out of us. Usually incurred by some kind of viral pathogen, zombies are often counted as the walking dead, but there's a reason these guys are at this end of the list and not further up. Despite their endless craving of human flesh and human brains, and despite the pathogen being passed by biting, scratching, or any number of ways, there's only one inherent strength in zombies: their large numbers. And despite the fact that my favorite zombie TV show takes place in a nice cold place like Seattle, that is one weakness. Zombies are basically walking corpses, which means decay. Sure, the idea of rotting, decaying flesh is unappetizing, and sure, the idea of these things being able to move around on their own can be frightening. Is the fact that if left in the sun too long, the flesh will simply fall apart. It's also a fact that when it gets cold enough to snow, the same flesh that is decaying will freeze solid. So the numbers are their strength, and a changing climate is one possible weakness. The second is how easily it is to dispatch a zombie. When someone who has a fair degree of knowledge regarding cutting weapons, such as swords, it would actually be pretty easy to dispatch the whole horde of them single-handedly. That, and they seem unable to resist a good dance number with talented musicians. So yes, we watch TV shows where zombies are on the prowl, we watch movies where the dead walk, and they seem to be everywhere, eating ravenously, but in the end, the thought of a zombie apocalypse is one that could be easily dismissed. Number 4. Hellhounds. While some may consider these beasts as cryptids, the idea behind a dog sent up from hell itself is something that is ancient. The first of these, Cerberus, guarded the underworld for Hades of Greek mythology. Having 3 heads, this dog was both fierce and wanting someone to love him and play. But the idea of a cursed hound coming up and preying on those that go astray didn't just stop. There have been many that have sworn their families had a devil dog following them, both fact and fiction. Perhaps the most famous curse hound is the Hound of the Baskervilles, the Sherlock Holmes story of a massive hound that plagued a family along the British moors. A tiny spoiler alert if you don't know the story: the more recent hound sighting was actually not a hellhound but a mistreated mastiff. There have been more recent sightings of hellhounds, though. Spectral dogs with powerful barks have been seen roaming around family cribs, big properties, and other places as a warning. Don't approach. Don't get greedy. Don't do things you might regret. The rule states simply that hearing one of these barks will cause you to have sleepless nights. Hearing one howl will give you nightmares for the rest of your life, but seeing one dog 3 times, especially if he tries to attack, means that you're marked for death and you will not be getting away. Number 3. Wendigo. Beginning as a Native American tale, this creature is something that many who hear it fear might just be waiting for them for reasons to be stated. The creature is usually the image of emaciation or the removal of all nutrients, as if it is starved to death, and can be attributed to demonic-style activity. The creature, whose origins can only be thought of as cursed, tends to possess individuals who have gone too long without eating, making them crave their traveling companions. It will kill them and eat them. While this might be a tale to warn of possible consequences of cannibalism, which is how the thing got started in the first place, it might also be worth it to note that several of these things have been reported over the years. Wendigo don't exactly stay hidden, and they can cause somebody to not only turn cannibal but also turn into one of them, meaning that someone who goes to the extreme of cannibalism might become so ravenous for the taste of human flesh that they won't ever want to stop. With the recent reports of a Wendigo-type creature known as the Rake, it might be a fact that they are coming back. That and Wendigo is a fun name to say. Number 2, werewolves. Quite a while ago, when fairy tales first came into being, wolves were considered a real nuisance. This is because the agrarian culture depended on sheep and would see wolves coming in to take out part of the flock for their food. We know now that wolves were picking on the weaker ones, the injured ones, but that didn't stop the Germanic fairy tale makers from casting them as bad guys. And then came the report of people who turned into wolves. The idea of people turning into animals and back was nothing new, but the idea behind the werewolf curse seemed the most ominous of all. Werewolves would come into town, stealing and devouring livestock and kidnapping babies, or so the saying went. The idea of silver being a bane of the werewolf was probably invented in order to give the people who believed they had one in their midst a means of believing they had a chance. But the furious attacks continued, and people began to blame their neighbors and their friends for being a dreaded werewolf, and the legend continued. It was thought the werewolf curse could be transmitted to an unsuspecting person by a bite or a scratch. Still, today, werewolves are part of the popular culture. They enter into the cycle with the rest of the creatures here because there are so many ways that they can be thought of as appearing. There's even a school of thought that it's a psychological issue of people believing they are actual werewolves. And every full moon, there are reports of a terrifying howl coming from somewhere, in place of a werewolf being turned into the primal and powerful creature it is capable of becoming. So, if werewolves are number 2, can you guess what made the top of the list? Do I even need to ask any more leading questions to which supernatural creature made it to number 1? Number 1, vampires. Big surprise. Vampires make the top spot. Unlike the zombies of number 5, vampires are thought of as someone who lives beyond death, not as a decaying corpse, but as someone who actually comes back. And here's the fun. Long before Bram Stoker brought vampirism to the forefront of people's minds, the idea of the undead stalking the living to steal their blood was already on the table. Indeed, it appears that Dracula's inspiration, Vlad Tepes, the prince in what is now Romania with the same name, might have been a bloodthirsty monster himself. The stories are easy to look up and difficult to really study, as the ideas he had would turn the stomachs of normal people. But long before, there are legends of those who were once thought of as dead coming back, going by many different names all over the world, like Singoli. The vampire continues to tantalize us and dare us, while it's also horrifying. And just to clear up the common misconception, vampires were thought to be able to move about in sunlight. It was actually the movie Nosferatu, with its casual reference of the vampire story, that brought the idea to mind that they can't handle sunlight. There are reports concerning vampires among sufferers of tuberculosis, family members dying off one by one, and then townspeople going and finding the first, quote, victim, close quote, when she was unburied and her casket open, not decayed. She didn't even smell. Not knowing that the bacteria that caused tuberculosis could even exist, and given that one of the common symptoms of the disease is the expelling of blood as the sufferer coughs, the townspeople figured that the girl was, in fact, a vampire. They desecrated her body by cutting off her head and removing her heart and setting it on fire. They then placed the ashes in a tea for the most recent sufferer. It can only be imagined, if he was told the horrifying ingredient, what went through his mind as he consumed the ashes of his sister's heart. Although they have found a rare disease that seems to have the symptoms of vampirism, the idea of the actual creature has a resonance across the years that make it more likely to see them coming back again and again and again. And it's no surprise that vampirism has seen a resurgence over the years, periods of romanticizing the creatures, sneaking through, as some think, to ignore their reputation, and others try to insist that the stories of these things can be told new. But who really knows? Who can really say there aren't reanimated corpses, demon hounds, spirits of cannibalism, lycanthropes of the long-rumored undead roaming the earth, seeking victims and sustaining from humans? most of whom never did anything wrong. And who's to say that the one who silently watches isn't planning how to exterminate someone for their
So that's it.
body?
There's a lot more to these supernatural creatures that can be found either online or in any library. If you want to find out more, please look them up. And please like, comment, subscribe, and check out the links in the description below. And watch for my special Halloween presentation. That'll be fun. Then after that, we'll try and go a little less on the side of horror. Wendigo, 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 Wendigo.